Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this next session in our SAUG Solution Series. This series has been created for our consultant members to showcase their solutions and to show how they can assist with optimizing your SAP systems and projects. Thanks to IQX Business Solutions for their continuing support of SAUG and for making this session possible. Today, we are looking at rethinking and transforming your SAP project creation, capital planning, and budgeting. Before we start, just a few details. This session is being recorded. The recording and a copy of the presentation will be made available on the SAUG website shortly, and we'll notify everyone when it's ready. Everyone is on mute, but you can ask questions at any time using the question function on the right of your screen. And so we'll go through the questions at the end. There will also be contact details, or you can even contact us. So if you have any questions in the future, you can contact the presenters or us directly. Also, if anything about today's topics makes you think of other topic areas you'd like to see, so as always, we welcome your feedback. Please let us know in the question function as well. Now, I'd like to introduce our presenter for today. It's someone who's well known to SAUG members and an expert in this area, Richard Frickberg, who's the Chief Executive Officer of IQX Business Solutions. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone for your time this morning. Delighted to talk about our favorite topic, which is CapEx. I thought we'd just kick off with a reminder about what is CapEx, and really it comes down to how we allocate time and money to the projects that matter most, right? Ensuring that we can deliver projects in record time at lowest cost and least risk, taking into account our strategic goals and objectives, the relative return and benefits from each investment. Considering the priority, most often projects, aren't included or excluded, they're prioritized or deferred, and it's understanding how important it is to do it this year as opposed to next. And when we have a choice between projects, we want to choose the ones we're more confident in a successful delivery of. So it's a balancing act, essentially, CapEx management, but critical for an organization's strategic success. We often see the CapEx process described into these major phases. So at the beginning of a CapEx planning cycle, we tend to gather wish lists from the various departments. Those wish lists get prioritized into some form of a CapEx budget, which then goes into a business case preparation and approval workflow. Once a project gets approved, we have to forecast the likely expenditure as we progress with the project delivery. Ultimately, projects get completed, reviewed, and the outcomes learned from. So if you think about your environment today, and I really want to try and make this session as interactive as possible, and asking Michael just to launch a poll, thinking about your CapEx in your environment, in your experience as either someone who's proposing a new project or administering a new project or doing the integration of your capital management system into your SAP system, or trying to do capital reporting out of SAP or SAC, or third-party reporting systems. What's the feeling out there in terms of where you see the biggest pain point in regards to this critical business process of capital expenditure planning and approval?
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, we've got the people are responding at the moment, so we'll just keep it open for maybe another 20 seconds.
So what we hear from the market is, the budgeting exercise is painful. There's a lot of toing and froing of spreadsheets ultimately, and some consternation amongst department heads as to why their budget was cut and the other guys was increased, or why certain projects were excluded. So the annual budgeting exercise is a pain. Other customers comment that the quality of business cases that get produced in their current systems is of variable quality, let's say. A lot of requesters, and particularly us in IT, often complaining about the time it takes to get our CapEx approval over the line. We also know that, being in the project world ourselves, that forecasting can be a challenging activity. With so many moving parts, it's always difficult to forecast project delivery, and particularly with large capital works. Getting that timing right as to when activities are actually going to occur and costs actually flow is challenging. And then there's a lot of promises made in every business case, and many organizations struggle to really reconcile whether that value was actually delivered in terms of the promised cost savings or risk mitigation. So interested to get a sense from the attendees where the pain is.
Absolutely, Richard. Yeah, so this was a multi-select, and definitely capital forecasting accuracy came right way out in front. It was 73%. And then annual budgeting prioritization and benefit realization validation came equal second, both 55%. So those three were definitely far out there. The CapEx approval delays 27%, and then business case quality was only 9%. So definitely the capital forecasting accuracy was way out in front.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for that. So thinking about those pain points, and I guess specifically the capital forecasting accuracy or the budgeting cycle, what are some of the root causes have you identified in your environment that is causing that pain? Yeah, some of the things we hear is the complexity of the inputs that are required to be provided. Some of them are simple, two-dimensional spreadsheets. Some are very complex workbooks. Some are very complex third-party systems. But I guess the most common concern we hear is we're heavily reliant on spreadsheets in general for the budgeting and the business case and the forecasting and the reporting. So interested to hear if that's common amongst the attendees. Where we do have a dedicated capital planning solution, is that deeply integrated with your SAP environment, or do you find there's still a human glue process involved to transfer data, from your SharePoint approval form, into SAP to create your projects or internal orders, and vice versa, getting data out of SAP and manually putting it into analytic tools? Interesting to hear that workflow seems to be less of a problem these days, but for many organizations, workflow still remains a challenge. And the more significant the CapEx, the more involved stakeholders there are, and the more likely the process does get bottlenecked. So it's interesting that that's not perceived as a major problem today, which is good that we're solving the workflow challenge. And then this, I guess, common pain point of the single source of truth. Is that ECC? Is this SAP Analytics Cloud? Is this Power BI? Do we have a single place we can go to understand our capital projects portfolio and how we're tracking, back to the forecasting problem, where we're going to end up at the end of the year? Any sense from the attendees where we're?
Well, yeah, Richard, you were correct. Excess reliance on Excel came out in front, so that was around 67%, followed closely by complexity of templates, so that was also above 60%. Then the third one was disconnected workflow tools, came about 38%, then no single source of truth, 31%, and then your manual integrations was 23rd. But definitely excess reliance on Excel was the main one, as you suggested.
Very good. Okay, well, thanks everyone for that feedback. So I guess the question is, how can we find help for these problems? And all the talk these days is about artificial intelligence. If this is a hard problem, to make a decision about which projects to prioritize as part of the capital budgeting process, or how to forecast more accurately. I suppose our go-to solution these days is, what can AI do for us? Yeah, what is AI and how can it help? So AI is become amazingly pervasive in everything we do. It's Apple Intelligence, it's car directional navigations. It's doing the abstracts of our webinar and creating summarizations of documents. So AI is everywhere, but what is it really? At the end of the day, AI is not mystical. It's not prescient. It's just machine learning, right? The machine is just learning what we do manually and finding the patterns. In order to learn and help us produce more reliable forecasts or make better selection decisions or understand the real workflows, we require data. Yeah, the lifeblood of any AI solution is data. We need a good volume of high quality, readily accessible by the AI tooling that's consistently produced, consistently defined. If two people both, produce business case justifications, but calculate, net present values using different discount rates, or different planning assumptions or exchange rates, we'll get very different results, and that makes it very hard for the AI to learn which is right and which is wrong. So consistency of that information is vitally important, and we need to be able to know from the inputs, what generated successful output. So without knowing, what success looks like, it's hard for any AI system, to optimize its algorithm, right? So unless we know whether a project was successful or not, or unless we know what the actual results were against that forecast, it's hard to learn how to improve our forecasting accuracy or project selection in the future. So if that's what we require to make use of this great new technology, how can we, apply that to this whole capital budgeting challenge, right? So interested again, if people are attending the session, they've probably had a thought about AI and how it could help in the CapEx process. Coming into the session, where were people thinking they're most likely, low-hanging fruit for the adoption of AI is? Is it, in helping you draft your business cases using some of the generative AI capabilities to write better prose? Is it around, the sensitivity analysis, scenario analysis, evaluation of optimal project portfolios? Is it in providing more realistic, objective forecasting? Do you see it as a way of driving analytics, being able to summarize and interpret and present this information to key stakeholders? Or is it about some of the analysis of the critical supporting documents that are generally attached to a business case? What are people thinking? You only get to pick one here, I think, Michael.
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
So just see which one comes to the fore out of those potential use cases.
Yeah, interesting. I'll let it for about 10 more seconds, but definitely forecasting way out in front. It was actually up to 80%. Now it's settled around 70%. So definitely, the most important one, followed by project portfolio optimization around 20%. And then third was document generation summarization. So very sort of clean, sort of division there. The others weren't selected at all, but definitely forecasting way out front. Then the other two, project portfolio optimization and the document generation.
Excellent, thanks, Michael. So that kind of aligns. I mean, in the market, we are seeing the AI playing a very useful role in all of those areas. Yeah. So business case preparation, where we see the application of AI is translating, I guess, engineers' technical understanding of what needs to be achieved, into a winning business case that the executives can understand to really assist with the process of identifying benefits and costs and risks. There's a lot of accumulative knowledge in the world, and when someone comes to writing a business case, it makes sense that they can access some of those insights without having to think too hard. The promise of AI. It's good that we've looked at that project portfolio selection and really drilled down into, or using AI to really drill down into the patterns and identify the key features of a project that is likely to result in a higher or lesser degree of success. Yeah. So all project submissions tend to look rosy. Not all of them achieve the expected results and the expected time for the expected budget. So if we knew better, what were the real drivers of project success, we'd be able to factor that in to our prioritization of project selection. And the forecasting piece is really about getting the, having the data source where we know what we planned, we know what we forecast manually, and we know what was actually incurred, and we can learn the patterns of behavior. There's a very common practice in project management, which is called sandbagging of your budget. Everyone knows that if you say you're not going to spend the money this year, you lose it. So customers refer to it as the kind of shark fin or snowplow effect, but everyone reforecasts their project spend into next quarter, or fourth quarter we're going to spend it all, and in reality, because of project delays, it's most likely that money's not going to be spent this year. It's going to slide into next year. And if we knew that, there's other stuff we could have done, right? So it's vitally important for an organization to know when their capital expenditure is actually going to occur, so they can, when necessary, make adjustments, bring things in, or push things out. And whilst humans are fallible and are incredibly optimistic, I'd love to believe that we can catch up. The machine is much more objective, and it can give you another very valuable reference point. So the human forecast is X, but the AI forecast might be Y, and it'll be up to the executives to decide over time which number they prefer to focus on. And I would suggest that Y is probably going to be more accurate in the longer term. So yeah, just drilling down a little bit on those. I think I've mentioned most of those points already, but the business case preparation, it's really making it easier. So we did identify the complexity of the templates as a challenge, and wouldn't it be good if, rather than a form to fill in, we could just kind of tell the machine what we're after. We need to replace this bit of kit on the production line, or else the whole production line is going to stop. That's pretty urgent. It's pretty no-brainer. Please build a business case for that. Or I've heard about this great new, AI-powered CapEx management solution. Let me just describe it to the machine, and let the machine fill out the business case accordingly. We're so reliant these days on grammatical correction of our writing, and accessing. It's interesting just using the tools, sometimes how uncannily clever it is at identifying further risks and opportunities and cost components that you might not think of. You're a specialist in a particular area and you want a solution. We might be thinking about an AI solution here, but we're maybe not fully factoring in the change management aspects, or the infrastructure aspects, or the compliance aspects. And as soon as you start utilizing the AI tools to flesh out your business case, you're suddenly identifying a lot more implications and considerations to take into account. When it comes to that portfolio selection and getting a realistic sense of project costs and outcomes, the machine does a better job than humans at really understanding the sensitivity of some of those components based on not hope but on experience. So we know that when we prepare a business case, we tend to be overly optimistic. We talk about the best case scenarios, but in reality, all of our assumptions are estimates only, and being able to leverage our prior experience to produce more realistic ranges for our likely costs and outcomes presents a more realistic range of outcome options to the executives when they're making their decisions. The higher the volume of projects that an executive team needs to wade through as part of a budgeting exercise, the more important some of these summaries become. And we are seeing that in our day-to-day lives, how AI is particularly good, even on your phone these days, at summarizing your emails before you even open it, just getting to the heart of a business case, and reducing a big business case document into an executive summary. That it makes it easier for the executive team to discuss at a high level the key initiatives that they want to progress. So the real value around using AI in the forecasting process is, as we discussed, the objectivity that it provides, and also the ability to act on that. So if we knew that this project was likely to go off course, we can do something about it, and ultimately stop projects that no longer present a viable business case. Take into account economic factors. It's a very unpredictable world out there. So when these first when these business cases were first prepared, we had one set of assumptions, and who knows what the tariff situation or the exchange rate situation is going to be 8 to 12 months later. So being able to reevaluate dynamically the business cases and stop money being spent when it's really not justified, and reallocate that time and money to more very valuable initiatives can have a really significant bottom line ROI impact. Okay, so if it sounds like a good idea to implement AI to try to help with this critical process of choosing the winners and monitoring the forecasts and stopping wasting of funds and getting better return on our investment, what do you think would stop you in terms of, is it, we don't have an AI platform selected with the capability within our organization? So are we still searching for an AI capability? Are we struggling with the change management, the adoption of AI inputs? So will the execs accept an AI generated forecast or an AI generated summary? Do you think the challenge is likely to be in our current skill sets? We're probably mostly SAP practitioners on this call. Do we know enough in terms of how to go about curating the data sets and generating the extrapolations and insights from our data? Are we concerned about the cost of AI, the processing, the infrastructure, the skills above? Do you think that's going to be the limiting factor to adopting AI? Or are we concerned about the data, the richness and availability, reliability of our data to generate those insights? Thinking about your organization, where do you see the challenge in adopting AI further lies?
Yeah, so Richard, interesting. So adoption's number one, so about 38%. So as you said, the change management, the adoption of AI is the number one concern, but followed fairly closely by cost, 23%. Then data and implementation skills are equal at 15%. So and platform selections the last at 8%. So definitely adoption.
That's really interesting. Thank you for your feedback. I suppose the adoption question is a hard one, right? And it's only going to be, that perception is only going to be changed on results, and that requires good platform and skills and data to produce it. The one thing that we can, as a technical audience, really assist with is the data. Yeah, that's kind of in our domain of control. SAP, is our center of truth data source, so we know what data is available in SAP. The problem is that comparing the SAP data, which is really good when it comes to the actuals and the commitments, and the value of the assets that we capitalized, and what we spend on each of our suppliers, that's all facts. Yeah, so we've got good factual data about actuals. What we don't tend to have is good factual data about the plans and the budgets and the approvals and the forecasts, and the knowledge of when those were updated and when they were changed and who did it and under what conditions. And the reason that many organizations don't have that good planning data for comparison to the actual data is a lot of that planning data, our budgets and our business cases and our forecasts, can be trapped into spreadsheets. We said at the beginning that spreadsheets, were a problem in our organizations. And the real problem of spreadsheets, has always been there in terms of your reliability and integrity and accessibility and security and all those things. But it's become an even bigger problem now that we're really trying to make use of that data to drive our AI strategies. We're butting head on to the concern that we don't have a reliable data source for the justification of our projects. All we have is really good data on the outcomes, and whether they're good or bad, we don't actually know. We know the fact of how much we spent, but we don't really have in our SAP environment understanding of whether that was successful or not. We don't know what was promised in terms of headcount savings or revenue growth or safety or environmental emissions to be able to compare the expected result with the actual result, and then know whether that project was really successful or not. So if we, leave here today with a mission on how can we adjust our CapEx planning processes, change course to take more advantage of AI, I guess my recommendation from what we can do is help with the digitalization of the process. Step number one is digitalize the process all the way through. So we have that information. We know what was planned, what was promised. We know it's consistent and high quality data because everyone, should put their data into a common repository, use common metrics, use common assumptions. With that data, we will have the insights, as to which projects, based on which of those features delivered the best results, and we will be able to factor that learning into more effective project prioritization and budgeting strategies. And ultimately, what executives really want is a more reliable forecast. So that's great. We're motivated, and how are we exactly going to do that? So that's a question. I think it's the last question for you guys. If you want to go and improve your CapEx management processes, what's kind of important to you when you look for a solution? Are you really thinking SAP first? Are you looking to see how you can do this first with SAP? I assume no one here is really building their business cases in SAP today. You can with investment management and PPM, so there are SAP tools. So is that kind of the path you would go down? Are you looking for speed? Is this something that's a high priority for the execs, and you really just want to be able to not spend too long building a framework to handle this? You want something that you can plug and play? Are you most concerned about the user experience and change management? Because you should be. I think I'm delighted that you mentioned adoption as a challenge, and it is. So you need to show good results soon, to build that confidence, to encourage the adoption. Is the ability for your CapEx management team, the flexibility for them to control the solution important, or are you happy for this to be an IT delivered capability? And part of that change management is when you move off Excel, where the finance or business team have complete control of their templates and their processes, moving them into a more structured environment can be challenging change management exercise. And are you thinking on-premise versus SaaS? Is that a consideration that you factor in to your solution selection? Interested to get some feedback from what you're seeing.
Interestingly, equal. So speed and cost of deployment was equal with user experience and change management support. So both of them 30%, followed by business controlled configurability That one.
Agriculture.
I
Okay.
remember that. Yeah, so
Mm.
20%, and the other
Right.
two 10%. So
Okay.
definitely. Although I was seeing initially a lot more people going for the user experience and change management. So
Mm.
the first people who started, that was their number one.
Okay, that's great. So we're not so focused on the technology behind it. We're more focused on the outcome. The usability from an end user and an improver perspective, and that control over the data from a business perspective necessarily than how it's done with whether it's Fiori or something else. So a bit of the plug on what we do. This is all we do. So IKX, we do CapEx solutions for SAP. That's our exclusive mission statement. And we have approached it in a variety of ways. So we've got a SaaS front-end product which really addresses that early stage planning and evaluation life cycle. It is specifically delivered, as a SaaS tool to enable that rapid, low cost, ready to run experience. Yeah. So there is no infrastructure, there is no IT project. The classifications and workflows and calculations, work out of the box and are entirely configured by the business team. Yeah. So they can refine their scoring models and how they want to evaluate confidence and strategic alignment, and they can flesh that out as their environment matures. Yeah. So step one, you might only have one key metric that drives all decision making, like payback period, but over time you might want to take into account a proper NPV calculation or IRR calculation, etc., or a proper weighting of risk and strategic alignment. So that's the first component of a solution, is it's SaaS, and it's kind of also designed to be SAP independent to a degree, because we do find with larger groups, not all entities are on SAP or the same version of SAP, or SAP team are busy, with the S/4HANA implementation. But this is something you can roll out globally and get a consistent approach to their CapEx budgeting and allocation processes. Of course, it is deeply integrated to SAP. So SAP is the target, for those projects and those plans and those budgets and those actuals. So it's built with SAP in mind, but it works with other ERP systems too. When we get into later steps of the CapEx flow, like once you've already got the project approved, let's say, and you're starting to onboard vendors or raise requisitions or do goods receipts or do accruals, or particularly at the end, of the project where you're starting to wrap it up, close down those POs, return any unused budget if there is any, define your fixed assets and the split of your costs to your various fixed assets. Now you're in a much more SAP-centric environment. So we found that Fiori is a more appropriate user experience, because we want these CapEx apps to sit alongside all your other Fiori apps seamlessly, to the end user, whether this is an app that's provided by SAP, or it's an app that you've built yourself, or it's an app that we've provided, that's ready to run. It'll handle, is designed to, really address the user experience and that workflow process. Completing a project in SAP is pretty straightforward. You go and you change the status and you run the settlements. But in reality, deciding when the project is completed and making sure that all stakeholders, the project managers and the area managers and the procurement team and contracts, everyone is, the maintenance team, everyone's happy with the project completion and the asset definitions, and the cost allocations. That's much more of a business process, yeah. So we want to handle that business process through the Fiori app concept, collect the data, route it to the involved stakeholders, and then automate, all the back end SAP transactions to maintain those settlements rules, do the settlements, create the fixed assets, etc., etc. But yeah, at the end of the day, SAP is what's driving the accounting at the end of the day. So, what have we done so far with AI in the tool? And I guess we're still relatively early in the journey of integrating AI into the tooling. There are issues to consider around confidentiality. No customer wants their data to be fed into a generic AI learning model. So it's about clear separation of those data sets. But some of the areas, where we are starting to include AI is in things that people are already doing, right? So they're already going into their Gen AI chatbot of choice and looking for help, right? So we can kind of moderate that conversation. So they can provide a simple description of what they're after. We will reference information in the system about their strategies and get more detail, and then orchestrate a conversation to get back a result to ultimately populate the business case in all its forms with all its classifications in the system. The next step in our Stratix tool, is to drive the workflow, get the engaged parties to review these submissions, and then to help with the portfolio selection. So when each department submits their portfolio requests, we can compare the target CapEx allocation with their portfolio selection and give them tools to help optimize the portfolio selection within constraints. Yeah, so the constraint is often money and time, and looking at within that theory of constraints, we can automate the recommended project selection. Ultimately, we're talking to this auto select. Ultimately, of course, the decision lies with the execs, but we can help with that prioritization process. Having all the data in one single source of truth, helps us analyze the whole portfolio impacts. You can do these kind of bubble charts on different dimensions, but a lot more slice and dicing of the capital allocation is possible when you're not trying to consolidate spreadsheets, but you're able to look across an entire portfolio of projects, not only at the costs, which is one aspect of it, and those costs you might find in SAP, because if the project is forecast is SAP, you can probably produce that expenditure forecast out of SAP. But can you produce the future impact analysis, on the bottom line result as a result of that project portfolio? That's not really possible unless you have all your business cases in one place, But having a central place for the business case, we have cross-project visibility of our cumulative costs and cross-project visibility of our likely future benefits. And then when we present, to the execs a CapEx investment number, we can also show them how that's going to impact their depreciation costs and returns way into the future. So a key part then is the standardization of the financial analysis of the business cases in the tool. So we help with that. The financial analysis are model driven based on parameters to make it really easy for engineers to go create a financial analysis based on a suitable template selection. They might just have to capture a few key metrics, like how much does this machine cost, how long is it going to last, what are we going to save, and then all the key financial metrics like NPV or IR, the paybacks, they will all automatically be generated in a consistent way on consistent assumptions. But where necessary for more complex projects, we have a sophisticated financial analysis planning functionality, which lets them visually map out cost, CapEx and OpEx cost components and dependencies, so they can see not only the total costs, but where those costs will fall over time, right? For multi-year projects or projects that span over multiple quarters, the requirement is often to see a detailed, cash flow and forecast projection already at the planning cycle. And by maintaining the relationship between cost components and benefit components over time allows us to produce those periodic forecasts into the future. So time is the big element that's added here, and neatly presented as a Gantt chart, for example. Also a spreadsheet. There's various ways that data is presented. Behind each activity in the financial analysis, we can break it down to, is this an internal cost or an external cost? If it's an internal cost, is this an internal person or an internal machinery that's being used to produce this output? We've got cash flow profiles and exchange rates and all those things. So it's like a Microsoft project plan on steroids for financial cost planning and budgeting. The end result is the KPIs. A lot of scoring models built into the solution, so make it easy to assess risks with questionnaires, with heat maps. Be able to have commentary within the tooling to avoid emails. Summarized business cases with all this history, the linkages between projects, the supporting documents, understanding of the workflow status of a request, expediting approval with comments, gathering the responsible manager's forecasts, and ultimately being able to analyze the data, from a single source of truth, whether it's your CapEx, OpEx, and return, EBIT numbers, or just the cost flow itself. All right, a couple of minutes left. Just briefly introduce the Fiori apps. So our Fiori apps, are accessed off a launchpad, and as I indicated, the main points of value here is quick to implement, deliver value. So the apps are deployed, they're highly configurable, provides that simplified user experience. Here's an example of a project completion. They're all workflow enabled. If it doesn't require workflow, kind of the standard SAP apps will do. Our apps address the pain point between the request and the transaction, right? So if you know exactly what the assets are and how the asset value splits are going to be done, we'll just go into SAP and do it. But if you need review and approval and multi inputs, that's where you use our apps, right? Because somebody can draft it, somebody else can add the information they know, somebody else can review it, and then once we all agree, we can create the assets, maintain order statuses, close POs, etc. Yeah. So it's about multi-transactional orchestration at the end of a collaborative business workflow. So ultimately we're about saving money, optimizing your return, and mitigating risk. That's what you'll get out of AI, and to get it out of AI, you need to have the data to enable the AI to help you. So we'd love to provide a more detailed demo, discuss your situation, whether you're looking for a more SAP centric or like the idea of a ready to run SaaS solution. Here are our details. You can use your QR code to take a photo of your camera or find us on Google. Please reach out, and we'd love to chat about all things CapEx. With 1 minute to spare, any questions?
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, and I was going to add that we'll put the slides up very shortly and send a note out to everyone so they can also get the details there if they'd like a free demo. I've got maybe time for one question, Richard. The question is, how do you actually price this solution or these solutions?
The pricing question, don't we love that? It depends. No, we have a very simple pricing model. Like for the Fiori apps, it's price on application, because the whole idea of the Fiori apps is they tailored to your configuration and use cases. So they're a more flexible pricing model. With the SaaS solution, that's easy because we just activate and you're ready to run. There's no infrastructure, there's no per user pricing, there's no modular pricing. There's not even any consulting pricing necessary. So it's up to you how much help you need to configure it. So it's pretty much a fixed price, and we have a hopefully very simple pricing model of like $5,000 a month. So it's really, really low cost adoption. So for a fraction of what you're going to save, you can replace your spreadsheets with a seamless capital planning and budgeting framework.
Great.